All right, Sal, we're live, man. How you doing today?
Cool. Good, good. Nice Sunday. Good weekend. And we thought about a theme for today, which sort of like, okay, the secret life that I lived decade by decade. So this should be fun doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna have a guest come on that Sal knew back in the before he was in the witness protection program. So Sal knew this kid, growing up, and then after the fact, So I mean, he was around for quite a number of years. And also, we'll go into today. We'll talk about the Tommy DeSimone, the Jimmy Burke, the Henry Hill aspect, because I know people have been asking and wanting to know a lot more on those and the questions and everything. But I mean, these guys overall, I mean, these were another hitman that Sal knew. These guys were serial killers. So I mean, when it comes down to it, whether it was personal or not. But I mean, that's kind of what our theme of today is. We're gonna talk about that, and we did our show today about who would we do today? Jimmy Burke. So
Jimmy
yeah,
Burke.
yeah, we just did this morning. So did about an hour of that, and Jimmy had a hell of a story. There's a lot of information about him out there, Sal. So I mean, for you to be around him and know him for different periods of your life, I mean, that's pretty damn, that's pretty insane. But I mean, you
Yeah.
watched him from the beginning to, when he really, after the Lufthansa heist, is when he really went off the rails, it seemed like. So, I mean, yeah, that's what we've been doing. But it looks like we got some people in here already texting. Denise, your old friend from the past as
Well,
well.
Denise, how are you?
Oh shit! And we also got another one here. He said, "Top of the morning to you, Sal."
Good morning. Good morning.
This is Colby's girlfriend. She said, "Good morning." Hey, hey, Asha, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
We got John Collins. He's another Patreon subscriber. How you doing, John? Thanks for tuning in, man.
Hey, John. How are you?
Denise said, "You look fabulous, Sal."
So one of these days we'll get Denise on because I met her in 1978.
Yes, you did. And you know what? Let's bring on Joey now. Let's bring
Okay.
on Joey. Hey, Joey, how you doing, man?
Hey man, what's going on?
Pretty good, man. How you doing today?
This is great. It's Sunday, beautiful day out. I got my boy Ubats over there. It's always good to see you. And
I met Joey when he was 13. Tell him about that.
I met Sal in 1973. I was 13 years old, just a little kid, and I was totally blown away by this crazy guy that just lived life on the edge constantly. I mean, Sal was the kind of guy, if you were going to get off an exit ramp on a highway, he would see how fast he could get off the ramp just to see how fast he. So, yeah, as a 13-year-old kid, it was like going to an amusement park anytime I hung out with him.
Sal, do you have any questions or anything you want to throw at Joey to see what he remembers?
No, I like the idea that he's got a good memory, because I met him and his dad racing go-karts, and he'll tell you that story, which is fun.
Yeah. Well, and the go-kart world is it's a very tight-knit, people hear go-karts, they think it's something you push around your backyard, but the karts that we raced were professional go-karts. They, over 100 miles an hour. We traveled all over the country, spent thousands of dollars. Sal spent even more than that. But, and Sal got involved. Sal, if I'm not wrong here, that someone owed you money, right? You were loan sharking somebody.
Oh, yeah, that's right. One of the guys I gave a loan to didn't have any money, so he came to my deli and he was crying the blues. I don't got the VIG. I don't got the VIG to pay. He said, but I got something in the truck. I go, what is it? He said, a go-kart. And he brought me the go-kart. Funny stuff.
Yeah, he didn't know what to do with it, and they said to go out to this racetrack, and my father happened to be the president of the club. So Sal came out there one day and said, hey, I got this go-kart, whatever. And then that's how the connection started with him and my dad. And then I got to know him. And then, people don't know the world when Sal was in the karting world. Everything he did was always, he got the name Ubats for a reason, okay? It didn't come by accident. But he came into this karting world that was, there was the top echelon guys, and then there was the medium guys, and there was the family people. And he was very competitive. And he started out with having no idea what was going on. And by the time, 3 or 4 years into it, he wanted to win everything. He was hiring the top drivers. They, you know, he had the best equipment. I was going to his house. He's like, here's a car, jump in this thing. It was like, you know, built by the biggest engine builder in the industry, guy I couldn't even think about affording to go to. And he was handing me motors. Here, run this motor. It's fast. It's fast. And then we would travel a bunch to all these races. We lived in New York. New York's not known for racing, but you go to the South, the Midwest, racing is huge. And we would go to these tracks, and there was always someone that was a home track guy. So you'd go to these big national events, and you know, you do really good, but the local guy, it was his track, and he'd always beat you. So we'd go to California or, you know, Missouri or down to Georgia, and we'd always be good, but the local guys would always kick our ass. And then Sal would be like, you know, how do we get a race out at our track in we had a track out in West Hampton, Long Island. And we talk, I'm like, well, it's New York, it's far. We were two hours from the city of New York. So these people would drive to New York. They still had to go another 2 hours out until Long Island to get to this track. But in go-karting, we raced for trophies. These guys spent tens of thousands of dollars, and all you got was trophies at the end of the day. So Sal decided, well, how can we get them here? Let's do a pro money race. It was 1976. It was the bicentennial. So there was so much crap going on, you know, with 1976 and stuff. And I remember we were talking, like we were at his house, and I think he went in his freezer because that's where he kept his money at the time. Because I'm like, Sal, why is the money in your freezer? He goes, who's going to rob your freezer when they come in your house? So to this day, I'm giving away a secret. My money's in my freezer.
Thanks to Sal, huh?
But he pulled out like 15 or 20K, and he threw it on the table, and he said, start making phone calls, $20,000 to win. Let's get people out here. And he literally created the biggest go-kart race ever to this day. No one's ever had a purse that large. We had people not only from all over the country, we had from Europe. I mean, it was nuts. It was the biggest, craziest race you've ever seen. And then on top of the bicentennial on top of that, it was amazing. And we got all our people out there. He had drivers from California that he hired to come. These guys were flying back and forth and you know, racing and then going back home, then come back out to practice. And it was crazy. And that summer I kind of spent at Sal's house. That was one of the, you know, so I was 16 at that time. And I started pretty much living at his house for 3 or 4 days a week because we were going back and forth to the track. And then we would test and get out there when no one else was there. We'd have the track to ourselves and do stuff. But that's when I really got to see the life. My father always called it the other side. We talk about Sal and he goes, yeah, you know, Sal on the other side. That's stuff that he does. We don't talk about that stuff, you know. But living in his house, I would see, you know, you talk about Tommy DeSimone. I was at a barbecue at his house and Tommy came. And we're all wearing shorts and flip-flops, and this guy with a suit comes in. And I said to Sal, why is that guy wearing a suit? He's like, he just always wears a suit, you know. You know,
he had to hide the guns. Yeah, hide the guns. You know, Sal, I was watching your Tommy DeSimone one, and I was laughing because I remember a story with your first wife, because she went to school with him, right? Right.
And didn't he come to the house with guns one day, and she almost kicked his ass or something?
Oh yeah. He put 2 guns in the closet, the kitchen closet. And left him there overnight because I gave him a 9mm. He wanted to try out this 9mm. Probably going to go kill somebody with it. And then he came back, and my first wife was waiting for him with the broom, and she hit him over the head with the broom. You leave those guns. She didn't say guns. You leave those things in my drawer, and my kids are small. So, yeah,
my God! Yeah,
we had a lot of fun.
When I see Tommy being a tough guy, I remember his first wife beating him with a broom. Took the guns and left. He did exactly what she said.
Well, who were some other guys that Sal introduced you? You said you knew Henry and Jimmy Burke as well?
Henry very, very later on in life, way later on. And we actually, one of the last times we were in California together, we had dinner with Henry's wife, but Henry had just passed, and we got to have dinner with her, which was nice. One of the guys that sticks in my brain, and I found out later on, he was a ruthless killer, was Funzy.
Oh, Big Funzy. What's his last name?
What was his name?
Terracone.
He looked like Lurch from Addams Family.
Yeah.
And he wore a trench coat. And Sal always loved to play practical jokes. So I'm like 16 years old, I'm at his house, and Funzy must have called him and said he was coming over. He said, Sal, I'll be right over. So the door rings, and Sal goes, go answer that, and whoever it is, tell him I'm not here, right? I'm like, okay. So I open up the door, and I'm looking at this guy's belly button, right? I got to look up. Where's Sal? I'm like, he's not here. And he's like, yes, he is. And I hear him start laughing in the back room. I'm like, son of a bitch. So I was just scared because it was a big guy. And then later on, he's like, yeah, Joe, he's like a ruthless killer.
Oh, my God. Dude.
He was the made guy with the Genovese crew.
Oh,
So
okay.
stuff like that would happen all the time. I'm like, Sal, who was that? And he's like, oh, that's what so-and-so. I'm like, Jesus, I wish I would have known. Like, if I would have said something wrong, I would have wound up in a hole from this guy.
Well, why were you hiding from him, Sal? Do you recall?
Wasn't he? Was
No, just playing a joke on him.
Oh, just fucking with him.
I did a few heists with him, and he was always in the background. He got to the point where the FBI had photos of him, so he couldn't go what we called up front, like he couldn't approach a truck driver because he was 6'6". So Foxy and I would put him in the backup car, and he would follow us. And you know, he was okay, a wild and crazy guy. I mean, he really was. When I had the deli, I gave his daughters jobs. You know, I was always giving people jobs. You know,
the deli. Love the deli.
Talk about the deli, Joey. What was Sal's deli
What
like?
was that? Fat Nick, was that his name?
yeah.
That was just, when you went to his house, anything you wanted, you could have. Like, I'm hungry. Go to the deli. Tell Nick to make you a sandwich, right? I remember being in like high school. I was smoking weed at the time. You know, I'm like, Sal's like, you want some weed? I'm like, yeah, wait, let's go down to park at 5. At 5 o'clock on his corner of his, was 88th Street Park? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
It was a line. It looked like the cheese line at the welfare place. And 2 guys sitting there, one guy taking money and the other guy nickel bag, dime bag. And at 5 o'clock, like clockwork, they were lined up. The 2 guys would come out, the 2 dealer guys, and they take their money and he go over, tell him you want a nickel bag, tell him Sal to give it to you. Boom. So like anything I wanted, it just fell. I wanted to eat, I wanted to get high, whatever I wanted to do, it was there.
Yeah. So I mean, so Sal really being Sal's little protege, you had a lot of
Absolutely. And
you had some perks.
The great part of this story is I wanted to grow up and be like Sal. That was my goal, right?
Oh, okay.
Because I watched, you know, he always had a wad of money. Like he would take this wad out of his pocket, it would explode. It was so much, I can't even tell you what was in there, but it would just explode. And he had anything he wanted. He drove Corvettes. There was women all over the place. And but my father was a very straight-laced guy, and Sal loved my father. Like he just respected the crap out of him. And my dad was a Cadillac mechanic, and he was for 50 years. And he was so good that people would come to his dealership to have their cars worked on, and you can't request who to have, to pick a mechanic. So guys would come to him like, hey, could you work on my car at the house? So, I mean, he worked on Paul Vario's car. He worked on Sonny Francese's. We had like, people would go, is that Sonny Francese's house? I'm like, yeah, but my father, and they'd always go, Joe, if you need, and I don't want nothing. I laugh when I watch the movie Bronx Tale because it reminds me like they're always trying to offer Robert De Niro something, but he never wanted to get involved. And that's how my father was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be involved. The coolest life in the world. I remember I was 17 years old. It was my senior year in high school. And Sal and I were talking, and he just got 50 pounds of weed. I mean, that's a lot of weed. And I'm like, Sal, I can sell the shit out of this in high school. I mean, I'll make joints. I'll cut it. I'll make joints. I'll sell it a day. He goes, all right, cool. You make money. It's great. And then he calls me next day. He goes, forget about it. I'm like, why? I called your father. He said no. I'm like, you called my father.
Oh, why'd you call his dad, Sal?
Because I wanted to know, listen, I got a little weed. I mean, I didn't even sell the weed. I used to get it from my brother-in-law, who was Joey's age.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother-in-law made a lot of money selling weed. And I said to his dad, hey, look, Joe, his father's name was Joey also. I knew his father, Joey, his mother, Rita. I mean, I knew the whole family. Would go to dinner here and there. My wife was friends with his mother.
Yep.
And his father said, no, I don't want my kid involved. Okay, no problem. So I went back and told him, your father says, no, forget it. So, that's it.
I was more freaked that my father knew, though. I'm going to get my now. When I get home.
What did your dad say when you came home?
He never said a word to me about it.
Really?
Never brought it up. I think he just thought it was between him. Like Sal had not mentioned it to me yet or something. So they kept it between each other. And yeah, he never said a word to me. And I never brought it up to him because I was worried about getting my butt kicked. My father was 5'7", about 135 pounds. But he had forearms like Popeye, and he head off. So I never messed with him.
He was a great guy, So he worked. He was a working. What we used to call, I didn't call his father this. We'd say, "Oh, that guy's a working stiff. Oh, he's a legitimate slob." Joe. His father wouldn't pick up a dime off the sidewalk. He was like Honest Abe, But he would come to my Corvette shop. In the back of the Corvette shop, I had this long go-kart shop. And I'd have all these motors lined up. And they'd be going to a big race. I said, where you going? He said, we're going to go to Pocono. I said, who are you racing against? He said, he named all the guys. I go, Oh man, they got the best stuff. What are you using? He goes, I'm using that motorite, Bill. I said, wait a minute, come here, take this one. Well, take this one. He said, oh, I'm afraid if I take one of your motors, what if I blow it up? Forget about it. Don't worry about it. I'll get another one. It was funny.
What other stories do you recall, Joey, about like Sal and where you knew like he was onto something different on the dark side of his life?
So one night they would come out to visit. His first wife and my mom were very, very close, and they would come out to Long Island and visit us. And one night Sal comes out and he's like, I need to use your phone for a second. Now, so from what we lived probably 45 minutes from him, but from Ozone Park to Long Island where I lived was night and day. I mean, we lived and we had the house, they had the attached houses. They were in Queens, mob stuff everywhere. I was in the suburbs. Sal comes out. He goes, I need to use your phone. He gets on the phone. He goes, I'll be back in a second. Gets in the car, leaves. No one asks, you just don't ask him. That's kind of the relationship. And he came back, and on his way in, we had a clothing store there called Times Square, TSS they called it. He saw a Corvette parked in the parking lot. He got to my house, called up a guy, said, there's a beautiful Corvette we need sitting in this parking lot. And they stole it while they were having dinner at my house.
That was Peter Cicero.
Is that who that was?
Oh, so you had called Peter up and told him to do that?
One of my car thieves, I said, come out with your tools right away to such and such. I'll be there in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. He came out there. I go, see that red Corvette? I want it at the shop. Got it in 5 minutes, and that was it. Yeah.
That's the funny part. It was crazy.
Damn. So I mean, with this Peter Cicero, what did he go on to be? Was he like, he said he's one of the hitmen you want to cover, right?
Yeah, he was one of the hitmen that impressed John Gotti and Angelo, and he was involved. Peter was like, let me see, Peter would be a couple of years older than you, maybe 68. So when I met him, I was like 33, 32. He was like 23, 22. Mm-hmm. And I told him the heroin business, but he wanted to be a gangster. And he said, well, what's the one thing you didn't do? I said, rob an armored car. He said, tell me about it. We're going to go rob an armored car. And he did. I mean, crazy guy, really crazy, But he got tired of the new mob, which was changing. And, he thinks Gotti destroyed the old mafia traditions. That was his opinion. And he testified against Junior. He testified a whole bunch of guys, But he did kill people, Peter Cicero. But he was a real nice guy. I mean, I told him the heroin business, when my kids were small, he bought them 2 brand new motorcycles, like mini bikes, as a Christmas gift. Peter had a good heart, good guy. I liked him, but he wound up doing a lot of time and stuff.
What did he ultimately got busted for killing people, or?
No, he got busted for an armored car heist, and he didn't know what to do with the money. So he said, "Let me go meet Angelo." So he went to meet Angelo. I think Angelo set up a deal to buy the new cash and give him used money, which was not a problem for Angelo and all those guys because they had drug money. They wanted to get rid of the drug money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so Joey, you had said that you had saw the mafia changing as well, like how Sal describes, the old mob and the new mob. So what you would consider Sal, of course, with the old mob, but what did you notice? I mean, you were an outsider. I mean, you were kind of, hanging around Sal and stuff, but I mean, what did you notice?
Well, it was a big deal in our life. And I always tell, I got a job one time with DuPont. It was actually, so one of the top 5 companies in the world. And I'm being interviewed by some big guy, and very crazy question. He said, Joe, you're an Italian New Yorker. What do you think of organized crime? And I'm like, this is a crazy question for like an interview for DuPont. But I thought about it, and I said, without it, you have unorganized crime. And he kind of looked at me like that wasn't the answer he was expecting. He goes, that makes sense. And that's how I grew up. Like my parents lived in their house for 6. I just sold my father's house. He passed away this last June, had the house for 60 years. No one ever broke in our house. No one ever messed with my parents. The mob to me wasn't bad. They did bad things, but they usually did it to each other, and it was a way of life, and it was organized crime. It kept all these, once the mob went down, you got Colombians and Asians and everybody came out of the woodwork. Now you have 50 different mobs out there, where you just had it down to one that was controlling everything. But what I saw, Sal was involved, but I don't consider Sal a gangster. Sal didn't give a shit about wearing $2,000 suits and being known as a gangster. Sal wanted to make money. He was a businessman. Sal could have been a CEO of any company in the world. If in a different life, in a different angle, his brain, the way he thought, he was the most intelligent man I ever met. His math skills are through the ceiling. The guy could add into, throw calculators out the window. But he came up through a life that this is where it directed him. But he wasn't about being a gangster. He was about making money. That's why he never killed him. It's why he never became a made man. What people don't realize, and we talked about, made guys couldn't sell drugs or they'd get whacked, right? That was the rule. Sal wasn't made. Sal became the guy for everybody to go to for drugs because he wasn't made. So if a guy from the Genovese family wanted to sell drugs, he couldn't do it, but he could give Sal money and not know where it's going. And at the end of the day, Sal could double his money and hand it back and have no idea about the transaction. And that was brilliant to me. That was a great, he kind of cornered the market on drugs by not being a made man and not being a gangster, right? I mean, that's how I saw it. I'm like, he's freaking brilliant on this stuff.
Yeah.
So as you started getting people like John Gotti, everybody talks about Gotti. I'm not going to say anything bad about him, but he made it too public. When you have when you have law enforcement, when you have people, politicians and judges and people in your pocket that are doing you favors, if you start exposing that, if you keep saying I'm the Teflon Don and you can't get me, people are going to understand that something's fixed and they're going to start looking, under the table or what's going on here. And he put that out there too much. Like, yeah, John, you're Teflon Don, not because you got a great freaking lawyer or you're good. You're paying off somebody. That's why you're getting off. It wasn't because Cutler was a great lawyer. It's because you had someone in your pocket. But if you keep getting off and running through the streets going, you can't touch me, you can't touch me, now you're making those guys look bad. And they're going to start, some judge that might be taking a take on the side, he doesn't want to become exposed, right? Or a politician or anybody else. So they blew all the old time mobs built those relationships. Like Sal, when I was talking about that drug thing on the park, right? When they were selling weed at the corner, the cops would drive by and wave to us.
And incidentally, Adrian, you know who ran that whole marijuana business?
Who?
Anthony Reggiano's brother.
Really? Albert,
who lived across the street from the park. We all lived on that same block.
Right there, yeah.
Oh, okay. Damn, man. See, look at all this shit's all connected, man. All you guys.
But you had a cop that was making $20,000 a year. That was these guys would double it here. Here's another 20. Now just anything crooked, just don't look over here at between 5 and 5:30. You're not really doing anything wrong. No one's getting killed. No one's getting hurt. It's weed, whatever. But they were probably making 100,000, so 20 was nothing to give away to the cop. Right? The cop would literally drive by and wave. I saw a cop. I hit the floor. They're like, "I don't worry about it. It's cool."
Well, Sal, talk about your, your involvement with corruption with police officers, because you paid off the law enforcement, juries, and courts, and all that stuff. So, what was a situation that you had done that?
Early on, when I had the Corvette shop, Joey would come there and visit. I had all kinds of beautiful cars. So, I made contacts with corrupt detectives, and I'd get a stolen car, or I'd get a wrecked car, and we'd clone the car, and it would become the car that was wrecked. We'd get a brand new one and stick the VIN number on there. Well, I had detectives that would run the VIN number for me, and when I sold it, it would eventually get to the consumer. Now I'd find out where the car resided. I'd go steal it back and cut it up and destroy the evidence. So, it was all payoffs. And the insurance companies those days, one insurance company did not share information with another. Like today, you get a car that's a total wreck, you can't do anything with that title. Every insurance company knows it's a total wreck. So they got smart and they teamed up. And that's what changed everything. There was just, there were crimes that were all involved. It was easy to get away. But as we got into the 80s, everything started to change, especially, the late 70s, 80s. But, there was guys that were smart, like Sal I was in the hot car business ahead of the drugs. He made a fortune. Then he saw it changing and he moved to drugs. Well, that's what I would do. I'd find some type of gig, and like Michael Franzese did gasoline, and so I did stolen cars, but it was all funded by my secret drug business. Even though I had a go-kart track up in the 80s. I had a secret drug business, which was funding all the other stuff I was doing. And I was buying stolen jewelry. I was buying all kinds of stolen merchandise. You name it.
Well, Joey, did you ever encounter, because Sal had Roy DeMeo, he was doing business with him, and John Carniglia, Charles Carniglia. Did he ever introduce you to any of them guys, or did you have any
guys? Who was Joey's godfather?
Oh, that's Joey Cataldo.
Cataldo. I met him.
How was that?
Yeah.
Dominic.
But I didn't really know the extent of what he was. I was a kid, so you kind of knew people were connected. You didn't ask. That was something I learned as a little kid. You don't rat people out. You don't ask too many questions. And if you're a kid, you just shut up and shut your mouth, open your ears. That's what I was trained as a kid. So you just said hi. But these guys that I did meet liked me because there was a lot of guys my age that all wanted to be gangsters, and they wore the little hats and their gold chains, and I was never that guy. So when I did meet these guys, they're like, he's not just another punk. He's like, he's a good kid. We were talking, Sal and I were talking recently about Paul Vario. He lived in my town in Long Island, and he owned a bunch of clubs. Mm-hmm. And I bartended when I was 18, 19. Drinking age was 18 then. So I was bartending 18, 19. And he would come into my bar because he didn't want to hang out in his clubs. And he called me the kid. You're a good kid. You just, because I was a good kid. That's just all there was. I didn't want to be.
Yeah, but you were a good kid. You were doing what you were told.
Yeah. But, you were asking before, I'm not to interrupt. You were saying about things about Sal, other things. So Sal had a car dealership. It was literally like walking into a Chevy dealer, but every car in the lot was stolen.
Oh my God!
Backwoods. It was literally like, welcome to. He used a different name of his, but it was called so and so classic cars. And you walked in, and there were all these Corvettes. Everyone was like, the Corvettes were amazing. He had a Corvette that was a rocket ship. The thing was. Didn't you almost get shot? Or did you get in trouble with the Corvette?
Before I met you, I got shot driving a Corvette. Yeah.
By the cop.
Yeah, by a cop. Yeah.
He saw the hole. He's got the hole.
Yeah, and that's where I think Dominic, like you talked about knowing Dominic Cataldo, Joey, or meeting him a few times.
Yeah. Well,
after that, Dominic came out when Sal got shot, and he was like, he wanted to kill that police officer, didn't he, Sal?
Right.
He was pissed.
But it worked out, right?
It worked out. We fixed the case, and Joey would come to our summer barbecues.
Yeah.
In the middle of the two houses, we had this nice driveway, and we'd always have barbecues, and a lot of people would show up there. So we got to meet some of these guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a funny one. I haven't went through all the comments, everyone, but we will get to them. But someone commented, "Why is your name Joey Bubbles?" We'll get to the comments.
Well, let me tell you this answer. In Vegas in 15, I did dinner with a mobster. I cooked food for a bunch of people, and Joey was one of the producers of the show. And my other son, Joe, helped produce it. He did the IT stuff and all. So we were living in this nice apartment. I was single. Joey was single. My son was married, but he loved watching us, and we'd hang out. And Joey in the morning was a bit flatulent. So I'd call him Bubbles. He'd get up and make bubbles. And the other Joey would be sitting there laughing, But we lived together for like 6 or 8 months, and we had a lot of fun. God, we told a lot of great stories. So then all of a sudden I called Joey Bubbles, and my son was called Bags. So we had Bags and Bubbles.
Joey Bags. Yeah, so I don't like to tell where the Bubbles name. I like to leave it a mystery, but being that someone, usually Sal will go, it's not because his bubbly personality.
No, that's for damn sure.
Yeah, that's where it came from.
Do you have any more, stories about Sal that you wanted to go into?
It was just fun for me. I guess everything that he did. I'll give you one more story. We're doing this Spirit of 76 race out in West Hampton, right? And he has a driver in California. Now, there's a toll booth. There's a payphone at this track. Now, this track sees people on Sunday for a couple hours. That payphone probably gets used once a month, if lucky. Well, Sal's calling his, we didn't have cell phones. This is before cell phones. It's 1976. So he's calling his driver, like, you coming out? We're going to do this. Hey, I just did this on the motor. Or I took the card out. Joey did this. It looked good. Sal would have $10,000 in his pocket. But if he could beat the system, it was fun. Okay? So you go to a payphone, you make a long distance call, and they say deposit 75 cents.
No, $2.25.
$2.25, whatever.
Them days.
Correction.
It was a little Parliament cigarette box. I remember it like it was yesterday. And it had 3 little holes on the bottom of it. And it had 3 buttons. So when you put money in, they don't know there's money. It's the sound. There's like a beep that goes to the operator to know that you put money in. Well, he had the sound of a quarter, a dime, and nickel that it made, recorded on a recorder. So if someone said, deposit 75 cents, Sal would hold the thing, and they go, thank you. And he would, right? He had 10,000 in his pocket. He's stealing 75 cents. It wasn't about the money. It was about beating the system, you know. But we were out there for two or 3 weeks, and he's calling California 10 times a day, right? So somebody probably said, hey, we got to go check on this payphone because and they went out there and there's no money in it, right? So one day we're out there and he makes the call. She says, put in the money, whatever it was. He goes, she goes, no, please deposit the money. And he goes, she goes, could you hold on a second? And I remember him going, fuck you. And he hung up the phone, jumped in his van, and the go-kart track was in the back, and there was a drag strip in the front. And there was also a Suffolk County Police Department out there. So Sal goes, something ain't right here. So we got in his car. Instead of going out to the track, we went down. We were in your old black van. This is before you got the new one, the black van. We went down the drag strip, probably at 100 miles an hour in this van. There was a snow fence at the end. He went through it. And then he had brought these big tents out for the track to store beer and food or whatever. And he parked the van inside of this tent behind the beer. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? He goes, don't worry about it. And about a half hour later, Suffolk County Police, they came through. They just came through a lot looking around. They didn't see anything, but they left. And that was the last time we used that. But that's the kind of shit. I mean, he had $10,000 in his pocket. We went through like a cop chase because he beat
for fucking 75 cents, Sal. Really?
Yeah, it was the excitement of it. But, it wasn't about the money. It was
just fucking around. Yeah. No, I see. Do you have any other questions you want to ask him, Sal, before we move on to everyone's comments? If anyone got any comments, please comment below and we'll get into them.
Oh, Joey enjoyed, he enjoyed the ride. I mean, we're talking about 50 years. And then not long ago, his dad was in the hospital. I called him and talked to him. And then when I did the movie Sinatra Club, I was so busy. He came to the set and I talked to his mom and she had cancer. But we always stayed in touch with the families over the years.
Yeah. My mom loved the hell out of you. And that was great. You got to talk to her before she passed. She really appreciated that.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah. Well, that's good that you guys are able to still talk and, come on here and, make for a very good, interesting segment.
I hope everyone enjoyed it. That was fun.
Yeah.
Well, me and Sal are going to continue to go on, but if you want to continue watching, Ben, go ahead. I'll get you out, but
we're going to we'll answer some questions now. I thought it would be great for generally the people to hear. Here's the guy that I met 50 years ago, and he stayed abreast of what was going on and all these different secret lives I lived. I lived with one name in racing, another name in go-karts. Like I said, I lived another name in Hollywood, kept changing names back and forth, but eventually all that evaporated. Now I just use one name. So
I will leave on this. The one thing I would say that the gentleman that put him into the witness protection program, what's the Irish guy, right?
Ed McDonald.
Called us when we were in Vegas because he still stays in touch with Sal. And I was on the phone with him. He introduced me. We were all in thing. And he said, Sal, you are the easiest bet for us for someone that was going to fail the program. Like, we knew that you were guaranteed to fail and not make it. And they were like, you're the only one that actually did it right. Well, like, he actually was talking to the judge, right? He had talked to the judge that you're with. And he said,
oh, yeah.
Sal actually, when he got into this program, he gave up crime.
Never went back.
He was done. That was it. Done. And he stuck to that. And it's amazing. But prior to that, it was freaking nuts.
Well, so one last story was that you had said that Sal called you one time in the witness protection.
Oh, Jesus.
Tell us about that.
So here's the hard part. His kids were great race car drivers. They were good football players. There was a lot going on, and I watched, they were younger than me. So I watched them grow, and I was very interested. They were like my little brothers growing up. And then the whole thing happened with the program and they're gone. You just lose track. It's like you can't. I mean, there's people there was one girl that told the story that dated one of his sons. That she would go to the house every day, and the house looked like they had just run to the store, and you'll be back. The dog was even there. The dog was on the thing. The dishes were in the sink. It looked like the mom just ran to the store, and she'd be right back. And after a month, she realized they ain't coming back or whatever. And that's how it was. They were there, and then they were gone. And so I lost track. And you wonder and you think, and where the hell did they go? And I get a call one day. I pick up the phone. I'm like, hello. He's like, Joey, it's Sal. I'm like, are you shitting me right now? It was probably 5 years in. I mean, at least, He's like, everybody's fine. The kids are healthy. We're doing great. Life's wonderful. I just wanted to let you know. Bye. Click. And that was it. And I tried to call a number back, and it's like, this number you called. So it must have been a burner phone or some shit, a number but I couldn't get back to him. And I remember telling my dad, I talked to Sal today. He's like, you did what? I'm like, he called me, told me everything's good. And then that was it. He hung up. And so yeah, it was cool to be able to reconnect. At least I knew they were okay. And you just always wondered. And then he came out, and he called me when he got out. He goes, hey, and I happened to be living in LA, and we were living about a half hour from each other. So we went up. I was with my daughter, and I went up, and we hung out, and it was fantastic. And ever since then, we just, then I saw the boys. You got to remember, his boys were, what was Joe, 53? So he was 7 or 8. I mean, I think, when I last, we probably 12 or 13 when you left, and he comes back.
You were like 11, 12 years older than Joe.
Yeah. I think I was 10, 11 or 10. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was 23 and he was 13. Now I see him. He's 43, whatever, 43-year-old kid. It's like, holy shit.
Yeah, so, sure was a surprise.
It was emotional. It was really cool, reconnecting. And then the stories. I mean, that's another whole world for you guys from the time you went. And that's my favorite stories because people don't hear those. Those are great.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you coming on, Joey.
It was a pleasure. You're doing a great job, Adrian. Seriously, I watch all of these, and this.
He watches everything.
Yeah,
well, I appreciate it. I'm glad you're enjoying them, and I'm glad you got to be a part of one.
Yeah, me too. It's fun.
We'll probably, these lives are always cool. You can always pop in and out, man.
Yeah,
Tell some crazy stories. Think of any more.
I'm sure you're going to get a lot of questions. We'll let you see the questions.
Okay, sounds good. I'll be watching.
All right, Bubbles.
Have a good day.
See you, Joey.
Thanks
Bubbles.
for coming on. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was cool, Sal. That was really cool.
Yeah.
That was a really good, dynamic of everything. So let's.
After all those years.
Yeah, and I know. So okay, let's start answering these. So
there's Denise.
She said, "Yo, mob boy."
Yeah, that's what she called me. I met her in '78. One of these days we'll get her on.
Yeah, and just like Joey, same thing. I mean, she's got a lot of stories.
A lot of good stories.
I'm just starting from the top. So Jack Wild, he said, "Top of the morning."
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Aja.
There's Colby and his wife. Cool. There's John.
John Collins.
I knew his dad in '73. Oh my God. Hi, John.
Did Jimmy kill Tommy?
I don't really know that. Again, I don't know who actually killed Tommy. I mean, there's a lot of rumors. As far as I'm concerned, when Angelo told me in jail not to touch Tommy, it was 3 years later that Tommy did the Lufthansa heist and disappeared. So I really don't know exactly. There's a lot of people who think they know. I don't think anybody really knows who did it. Maybe one of these days somebody will come out of the woodwork and say, hey, I was there. It's no different than the Hoffa thing. There's a lot of speculation. That's what it is. Speculation.
Yeah. Well, we got another one here. His name's Claude. He said, really enjoying the way that Sal talks about things. Never trying to be big himself up, just calmly explaining things that he saw at the time. And let's see, not running other guys down.
Nah, there's no sense of putting anybody down. Listen, Michael Franzese, I met him in '78 when he got made, I think. And I didn't see Michael Franzese. I met him in Cataldo's restaurant. I didn't see him for years and years and years. And then about 10 years ago, when we did Making of the Mob, National Geographic, they put us in a limousine, took us to Philadelphia. They took us touring, around New York City and a few cities. And I got along with Michael. And I looked at him, I go, Michael, I got to tell you, you were born into royalty because of who his father was. And me, I came up from the streets. So I didn't elevate myself. I didn't demean Michael. Who am I to judge anybody? Because we all lived wild and crazy lives. So I like to tell the truth and tell the stories as I remember it. But, there's a lot of people out there really guessing what went on back in the day.
No, I know. I agree. Colby's wife or fiance, she said, great group of gentlemen and a great chat.
Yeah, yeah, that guy Bubbles is a funny dude, man. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, Bubbles
Yeah.
is a funny dude.
Let's see. Let's see. Could Sal give an example of Tommy D's humor and Joe Pesci's portrayal, like the voice and personality minus height far off?
Yeah, Tommy was wacky. I mean, when I first met him, I don't know if he was on coke, but after a couple of years, I know he was on coke. But he did have a good personality, and he was funny, and he liked to punk. He liked to punk people and stuff. That's what he liked to do. So he would come to the barbecues, and Foxy'd be there sitting at the table. Foxy would always bring a different girl. So my wife loved Foxy. My mother-in-law loved Foxy. Everybody liked Foxy. And I don't know exactly what happened because I left in July of 74 and went into the penitentiary. And it was December when Foxy got killed. As far as I knew from Angelo, Angelo knew Foxy well. John Gotti raised Foxy. They said Tommy did it. And that's what I heard. So was Pesci his portrayal? Pesci put on a whimsical side, but aside from his height, yeah, I guess at the end, Tommy was a radical, treacherous killer. But I think he got caught up in life, and I think he really felt he had to kill so he could get made, and that was where he was going. And there was plenty of guys who did that, but Tommy did have a sense of humor, and he did make my wife laugh because my first wife, he went to school with her, so they knew each other, and then I knew Tommy's wife, Angela. She worked in a bar like 8 blocks away. So we knew each other's family. But did Joe Pesci play him? I guess Pesci's voice was a little high pitched. Tommy didn't have that high pitched voice.
Yeah. Well, good answer to that, man, because that is, I was curious about that too. If people want to enter in super chats as well, go ahead, because we're going to try to get to most of these comments. But if you really want your comment heard, send in the super chat whenever it is, and you'll be at the top of the list for all these comments because we got quite a few of them. Let's see. Another one said Sally bots. Hey guys,
Hey,
smash that like button. This guy's cool. He's always following our stuff. This is great. Thanks, guys. That's from Chucky.
I hope you enjoyed this. I thought it would be great to bring on somebody who knew me when he was a teenager. But you have to understand, in those days, the left didn't know what the right was doing. So I never talked any crime in front of Joey Bubbles because that wasn't his name back then. But I knew his family, and he was a good kid. I knew his dad, and I respected his dad. I wasn't going to share crime stories with someone who wasn't in the life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. Let's see. This guy, Pete, he said, does Sal have any stories about Joe Dogs?
Oh, Joey Dogs. Yeah, I remember Joe Dogs. He hung out with Cataldo. They got involved in, I think, guns. And then Dogs wind up going to Florida. And as far as I knew, that Tommy Agro beat the crap out of Dogs, and Dogs flipped, and he wind up working undercover for the feds. But Dogs was a nice guy. I remember once when I was doing a Sinatra Club in 2009, I actually got on the phone with Dogs, and he was afraid to talk to me. He was nervous. So, he died. He died right after that. He was also a guy who liked to cook. I think he had a cookbook, Joey Dogs.
Damn.
Interesting guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And that's my brother. What up, Johnny?
Hey.
We got another one from Darren, I think it is. He said, Sal, you obviously knew Eddie Lino and his brother-in-law, Sal. Did you know Frankie Lino? Any good stories on them? Frankie just passed away last month.
I didn't really know those guys close and up front, and I didn't really pay attention. When you leave the life, you sort of forget people that you met. Really, there's people that come out of the woodwork. Oh, I remember you. I remember such and such. But I didn't know those guys really, Darren. Sorry.
Yeah, well, so you're not going to know everyone.
Right.
I did also drop the link, too, if anybody else wants to come on and, come on face-to-face and talk to Sal and myself. If you want to, I sent the link in the live chat. So let's see. We did get a super chat just now from Colby's fiance. Let's see. How do I highlight that? Let me bring it up. Let me click it right here. $5 super chat. Thank you, Aja. She said, "Why was Sal put in the witness protection program? Like, what was the ultimate thing that caused you to have to do this?"
Well, what was interesting was when I went to work for the government, it was solely about a corrupt judge. And the judge was a Supreme Court judge in Queens, New York. And I had fixed a couple of cases. I actually fixed a case for John Gotti's brother, Vincent, because we had the connection. Cataldo and I had this connection to the judge. So what happens is when you are working undercover, I really didn't go much undercover for the feds. It wasn't like I was an informant. I was really a cooperating witness. That's what I was. But when the government came to me and said, you know what? You're going to have to testify at the John Gotti RICO case in 86, early 86. I go, why? Well, because you knew John Gotti in the early 70s, and you're the best storyteller. So this woman, Diane Jackalone, put me on the stand. Of course, once you're on the stand, at a RICO case as a witness, the government deems you in danger, you and your family. And rather than, not go into the program back then, that was the 80s. I decided to go in the program. I had 2 kids. They were in high school. I wanted to see them get through high school. And once they got in high school, I separated and split from my first wife and went on with a new life. And that's how I wound up in Hollywood in 88. But again, another secret part of my life was when I got to Hollywood, I took a Jewish name because I was writing. I was writing with a famous writer who wrote Raging Bull and Mean Streets in New York, New York. So I had a Jewish name. I don't want anybody to know what my real name was. And I had that for a few years until after Gotti checked out. Then I decided, well, there's so many guys that had flipped. They can't go out and kill everybody. They have to have an army, So I left the witness protection program. Then I had another name. So over the years, I had several names. It all worked out. And my kids both went to college, were college football players, were professionals in corporate, and everything worked for those guys. And now I have a bunch of grandchildren, and I have a wonderful wife out here in Arizona. We live in Arizona, which is a great place.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. That's a good question, and thank you for asking that, Asha. We appreciate that super chat. Let's go over and Colby is our Patreon subscriber, so he had put a comment as well. He had said, Sal, the Sinatra Club, because you sent him that book recently, you gave him the autographed copy. You said, the Sinatra Club is an incredible book. Will you be doing more stuff with Fear City on Netflix?
I actually think we got an email. My wife got an email from the producer in London saying they're going to run this new documentary. I think it's How to Be a Mobster next month in October. So I did go to New York with Netflix, and they shot me for 2 days. And we'll see. I'm not sure whether they call it Fear City or you might be looking for it. It might be how to become a mob boss is what I heard. Mm-hmm. And they got information from me. And it should be interesting because I talked a lot about the 70s, way back.
Yeah, a whole different era, a whole different time period from a lot of the other guys that are out now talking. Good question, Colby. Of course, we'll get to another Patreon subscriber by the name of John Collins. He said, Dad, so he's talking about his dad, who was John Red Collins, who Sal had did heists with and stuff. And he was with the Lucchese crew. And he said, Dad said Tommy was crazy and always did what Jimmy said.
I kind of agree with that because I really didn't know they're in a relationship, between Tommy and Jimmy Burke. Jimmy Burke grew him up and led him. But Red Collins, your dad, hung out in Robert's Lounge with those guys. And then one time we needed another guy for a heist. And I asked Jimmy, he says, hey, take Red Collins. So we did one piece of work together. We did a heist, a fur truck. And that worked out. It was a little contentious, but I'm glad your dad is okay, living quietly and away from crime. Got you and your brother out of Queens, and it sounds like another success story. Not most people get to live a successful life after living a wild and crazy life. I think Tommy got caught up in creating an image. That was my feeling at the end.
Yeah. Well, good question. We got another super chat here, Sal. Let me click on it. Let's see. I don't think I see a question attached to it.
Automotive Group.
They send in $4.99, but I don't see a comment with it. Well, we appreciate the super chat. I mean, if you got a question, just drop it down, and I'll be sure to have Sal answer it. I just don't see a comment on it with it, but we do got my brother joining in. Let's see what he's got. What up, Johnny?
I've got a question for you, Sal.
Yeah.
What is the craziest or wildest thing that happened in your days in the life? It's got to be the top notch.
Craziest thing. I think when a guy tried to kill me, a guy named Carmine the Tail.
Okay. I don't think I heard this one.
This guy was in Queens and found out that I had a bunch of dealers selling heroin. And I think my stuff was better than his stuff. This was in the days when Frank Lucas used to label his heroin. Like, I didn't label mine, but because I had a half a dozen dealers, and I think he decided the best way to deal with me is kill me. So he drove a car over the top of me. We had a crazy fight, and the cops broke us up, and he ran around the corner. When he ran around the corner, a bunch of cops cornered him down the alley, and he attempted to kill a cop with an iron bar, and they shot and killed him. Well, the craziest part of the story was when I was fighting with him, somebody threw me a tire iron, and I was beating the crap out of his head. But maybe he was on drugs. He was a big guy, much bigger than me, and I was 215, 220 then, and this guy was super strong. And what happened was when the family decided to investigate his shooting, they discovered he had a fractured head, and the family was suing NYPD. So my attorney, who became John Gotti's attorney, came to me and said, "Look, you got to go to a grand jury." I go, "Mob guys can't go to a grand jury and tell the story." He said, "It's okay. I got the okay from Dominic. I got the okay from Charlie Fatico. Go tell the story about the cops who killed this guy, Carmine the Tail, that you beat him up with a tire iron." So they had filed a $2 million suit. And because I told the story about cracking his skull with the tire iron, their lawsuit was thrown out. And then the NYPD gave us a pass for a year. They didn't bother anybody in our neighborhood because I saved the NYPD a lot of trouble. Crazy story. Crazy. It's in the book. Read it in the book. It's a crazy story.
Adrian, you're gonna have to send me the book information so I can read it. Can you read it on the internet or off your phone?
Oh, you can find the Sinatra Club. It's in the book.
Yeah, there's
You can find it on eBay. Yeah, there's some books out there.
There's cheap ones on there on eBay and stuff.
Yeah.
Used ones.
Okay.
It's
I'm
a
gonna
good
read
story. You'll like it. You'll like
Yeah,
it.
you will.
I'm gonna read the book. Thank you, Sal.
All right, Johnny.
We'll see you.
You guys have a good one. Bye.
You too.
All right.
Let's see.
That's a crazy story.
Yeah, it is. I forgot all about that one.
Yeah.
I got that. The automotive group. Their question came in. I believe this is the one they were trying to ask. They said, "Hey Sal, it's how do you say that name? Can you read it?"
Jumanda.
So you know this person. They said,
Yeah,
"Great."
this guy. He was in Vegas with us when we did the mob dinner club.
Oh, okay. So you know him. He said, "Great seeing you in Bubbles. One of my favorite stories is about your truck hijacking days, and the manufacturer shipping the pairs separately of those shoes and stuff."
Yeah.
Great seeing you guys. Cheers.
Jimmy Burke was the most prolific, operator of hijacked trucks, hijacked goods. And we had gotten information about an Italian shipment coming into the U.S. of high dollar shoes. So we got the information, and Foxy and Tommy and I we hijacked the truck. And of course, they took the truck to the building where Jimmy told them to be. And I took the driver or drivers, I don't remember what, for a ride. And after a couple hours, they say, "Okay, come on down to, we got the truck unloaded. We're waiting for the buyer to come." So I get to where Jimmy Burke is and Foxy and Tommy, and we're standing there talking. And all of a sudden, there's a bunch of shoes and boxes on the table. This Jewish guy comes in. He starts opening up the boxes. and he's looking at the first box, the second box, the third box. He picks up a shoe. He goes, "We got a problem here." I go, "What's the problem?" He says, "They're all lefts. They shipped all left shoes in one shipment, and then they were going to ship all the rights in another shipment."
Absolutely
So they got
worthless.
so smart to us that we got nothing out of that loan. Did all that work for nothing.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to go on to another question from Matthew. He says, from what Anthony Ruggiano says, it was the killing of Foxy that ended Tommy. I mean, Foxy and Billy Bats could have, because they were both Gambino guys, I think.
Yeah, I think Anthony was there, after I left, and he probably did hear, real accurate information about the Gambinos, because Anthony's father was a captain. Anthony was close to John Gotti, so he probably did get the information that it was, Foxy's death that ended Tommy. He probably did. I mean, that's probably more accurate than anybody else knows.
That's true. Juan said, "Do you have any funny stories with Foxy?"
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Foxy was. There's a story in the book where Foxy was cornered in a nightclub, and Foxy didn't like blondes. He liked women with dark hair. So he was looking at this Colombian gal, and he was flirting with her. He had a great personality, and somehow the girl belonged to somebody else, and the somebody else guy, I think it was a Colombian drug dealer, came in, and I don't know if it's funny, but my friend Joey Cataldo, who was Dominic's brother, was drinking with them, and they called me up. He said, and Joey said, "Ubach, you better come down and bring something with you. You got some Colombians had Foxy in the corner. They were going to kill him." So the story's in this Knoxville book. So I drove over to this nightclub near LaGuardia, and I went in there with two guns, right up in the air, holding these two guns. And I pointed to these couple of Colombians, and I said, "Move over." And I said, "Fox, come on, let's go. We got to go." So I took them out, backed out of the place just like it was a Western, and Joey Cataldo had followed us out. And then Foxy goes, "Man, that girl was gorgeous." I go, "She wasn't that gorgeous. You could have got killed." I go, "Foxy." And, we would always kid each other. Like, we would say, "What's your name?" And I would say, "Buck." "And where do you come from?" I'd say, "Kentucky." And Foxy would say, "Yeah, well, boss, I know you don't give a fuck." And then we would laugh. I mean, that was no laugh, though. He could have got killed by those Colombians.
Yeah, no kidding, man. They're ruthless. We got another super chat in from Aja. She said, "How long was Sal in the life, and why did he stay in so long, and how did it affect his family life?"
Well, I started out in the 60s, and by, the mid 80s, I knew, actually by the 70s, I knew it was no place to be. Guys were killing each other left and right. The old-fashioned traditions were out the window. There was guys in the drug business that were becoming made guys because they had money. It wasn't like you earned it anymore. And yes, it did have a big effect on my first wife and my kids. I will tell you, my kids, my two sons, in the 90s. Oh, I'm sorry, not even the 90s. My sons were in their 30s when I was doing the Sinatra Club movie, and they called me. I was living in LA to a meeting, and I went to a meeting with my two sons in San Francisco, and I sat at this table in a long conference room in the Marriott, and they said, "Dad, we just want to tell you this has been on our minds for years. This is what we feel, how you tainted our lives." I mean, they were embarrassed over the years. I did crazy stuff, crazy things. They were disappointed in my behavior because I was wild and crazy, and it had an effect on them. But the good part was it drove them to be very straight. They never used drugs. They never got arrested. They went to college, got degrees. And I apologized to them like maybe in 2010. And I said, "I can't change the past. I'm sorry for what I put you guys through." And that was it. We were okay after that. So it did have a big effect. And of course, my first wife, she put up with a crazy guy. And, we just knew we weren't destined to stay together. So after 19 years, we went our separate way.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, Aja, because I mean, it really does not only affect Sal in his life, the decisions he made. It was his children, his wife at the time, so
Right,
and
right.
all the friends and family that you were around. I mean, you're just gone one day, and I
Yeah.
mean, that's just what it was. I mean, that's what we talked with Joey Bubbles today, and I mean, it's that's just what happened, and now you're doing good. You're your relationship with your family and everything. So I mean, it's just what it was back then.
Took a
Just
long time for a lot of healing. That's what I can tell you.
yeah. I mean, let's see. We got a lot of questions in here, but like I said, I mean, if either you guys can even send in 99 cent, super chats and stuff if you really want to get a question heard. But I'm trying to make sure we get all of our Patreon subscribers heard. I mean, Colby asked you another one. No, not that one. I know he asked another one about Sal. Was Henry Hill as crazy in real life as he was portrayed in Goodfellas?
I will tell you this about Henry because I was never really close to Henry. I was on the street with Henry. He came to Sinatra Club in the early 70s. When I got to Lewisburg Penitentiary, he was there. I got to know him in jail. And then after that, I didn't see Henry when he was using a lot of drugs. In 1980, my attorney was Henry's attorney, Mike Coro, who was also Gotti's attorney. Mike Coro came to my jewelry store and said, Sal, we're all in trouble. I go, what's the problem? Henry flipped. He knew in advance that Henry was going to go public. And so Henry was born and raised as a criminal. He followed Jimmy. Everything Henry did had an illicit side. I don't think he could ever do anything legal. So that was in like 1980. Well, I get to LA and I'm in the film business and I do an interview for Connie Chong. And one of the producers calls me a month or so later, said, Sal, an old friend of yours was asking about you. I go, who's that? He said, this producer said, it's Henry Hill. I go, yeah, what about? He's his phone number here. He wants you to call him. So I call Henry. He's in Pasadena. And we're both in the program. And I'm in LA. And Henry says, hey, come meet me in Pasadena. There's a cafe on Lake. So I go to meet Henry. I go, how are you doing? After all these years, he was still using drugs. He had a new wife. He had a little baby. And he introduced me to his wife, Kelly, and the baby. I said, what's happening? He said, I don't know anything about Gotti. But if we had a page or 2 or 3, we could sell a Gotti movie. Oh, really? So I was learning how to write at the time. That was like 1991 or 2. And I went back and I wrote a couple of pages, highlights, sort of an outline, a treatment. Gave it to Henry. Don't you think Henry went and sold it? We were supposed to get like 40 or 50,000, but Henry said he was splitting the money. He didn't split it. He gave me 8 or 10,000. He kept the rest. He was still a con artist, and he was still a crook. He never left being a crook.
Yeah.
And then he came to visit my job that I had. It was a property manager, and I opened the door one day. It was all the keys to 48 units, and he says, "Oh, Bots, you got the keys to those units. Let's go rip off a couple of the people who live there." I go, "No, we're not doing that. That was the old life, Henry. Now go find something else to do." So I had to watch him. He was still a scammer, a schemer, and a thief.
Great question, Colby. Because I mean, look how Sal answered that. It is insane that after the life, he was still involved with all that.
Yeah.
Sal, who was the most charismatic mobster you came across, and what made him stand out? This came in from Jay.
Well, there's no doubt that when I met Gotti, he wasn't as charismatic as he became, but he definitely was the Pied Piper of the mob. I mean, really, he could sell ice to an Eskimo. Gotti was slick. He really was. And as he moved on, because when he got out of the penitentiary in 72, when he came to Sinatra Club, he didn't even have any money to gamble, to play cards. So he was building an army. He got a lot of drug dealers who he said he wasn't involved with drugs to support him. Guys from Harlem, the Purple Gang. And before you know it, he was building a whole crew. And by the time, that was 72, by the time 73 came, when they whacked out McBratney, he was already a mob star, but sort of quietly. And then in the next couple of years, John Gotti was a guy who came out and drove a Lincoln. He wasn't happy with a Lincoln because a lot of mob guys had Lincolns. It wasn't long, and he was sitting in the back seat of a Mercedes. So, yeah, he had charisma. He did. and he was convincing, and he became who he wanted to become. I mean, I told Gail King on CBS, Gotti played the role of a movie star in the mob. That's who he was.
Yeah, that's true. I knew you were going to say him too when they asked that question. This JW, he was referring to Henry Hill. He said, bad habits are hard to break."
Yeah, Henry, yeah.
Let's see. Another one we got was, who was the funniest mobster you knew?
Oh, I don't know about being a mobster, but we
Well,
all had
yeah.
this. We all had this insurance agent, and his name was Tony Muscatello. I'm telling you, if he was a stand-up comedian, he would have been as funny as Robin Williams. So, and I met some good stand-up comedians. I mean, I put Joey Diaz in our synoptical movie, who's incredibly quick, fast, and funny. There was a lot of funny guys, really, and they would definitely amuse you, as Bessie said. But there was guys that were good storytellers, and I think Muscatello, who wasn't famous back then, later got involved in Florida with a whole mob crew down there and wound up getting convicted of murder. I think he's still in, I'm not sure, but very funny guy. I'll tell you who was really funny was Fat Gigi Inglis.
Oh, okay. What crew was he with?
He was with the guys. He was with the guys up in Harlem. He was with, I think, I'm not sure. I think he was with Lucchese's up there, but he was a very funny guy, big, fat, funny guy who could tell funny stories. And I was in prison with him. I'd give him a cigar, and he'd tell me stories. So, and he was part of the Bronx Tale group.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It looks like I actually got one in here for me. Droosh, I believe that's their name, said, "Can you comment on how Invest in Yourself name of your show fits with these mafia people you interview? Invest in Yourself sounds more like a self-improvement type branding concept." Well, to answer that, me and Sal, we do our show called The Lifetime of Mafia Tales. So we do our live, and then we do, our weekly episodes and stuff. So, that's separate. But, I do interview a lot of mob guys and stuff on my show. Ex-gangsters, a lot of other guys that were drug smugglers. Anything, crime related, I've interviewed them probably. But, the way that they fit in is, they got a life-changing redemption story. So that's where I get that from. It's investing in yourself now, changing your life around. And hell, that's how me and Sal found each other, because I interviewed him. And, I was like, okay, well, he really changed his life around. So let me reach out to him and see what we can line up. And, he tells us stories. But, at the end of the video or towards the end of it, we talk about I think half of that interview, we talked about what you did after the live.
Right.
We did about an hour and stuff. But, yeah, that's how me and Sal, we eventually partnered up. We didn't even drop that interview that we did, because we did in January of this year, and we didn't even drop that till like 5 months later. I had so many shows and interviews that I had to put out. So, eventually I dropped it, and we did 50,000. I think it's at 54,000 views now. And I was like, what, Sal, we should partner up, man, and start this show. And now we're covering Sal's life story. And, so even with this, for me and Sal partnering up on something like this, it's, it's not to glamorize or glorify these guys. The people want to hear the stories. They're funny, they're comedic and stuff. But it's also horror stories that people shouldn't want to get involved with this life, or if they have someone that's at risk, or, have a friend of a friend. People can really show their grandchildren, or, we get a lot of older people that watch the show. So, that's why I say that. But, they could show them and try to, tell them about these horror stories, because that's what it really comes down to. Ain't that right, Sal?
Yeah, and I think like Adrian and I have been talking, we're going to move a lot of this stuff to different types of presentations. I think we have a murder problem in this country, and by January, with the new election, we're going to talk about criminal justice, because I understand criminal justice and how prejudicial it is. So eventually, we're going to move over to murder in America, and I'm going to talk about murderers I knew, murderers I didn't know. I'm going to talk about why we have 3 women in this country every day murdered. And the public should know about this stuff, sort of to protect your family. And we have school shootings that are rampant. This bothers me, because the truth is, I never once fired a gun in my whole life.
Really?
It's just an example, a symbol. I didn't even need a gun to make money. And
Wow.
of course, I'm not happy about being a drug dealer, but I got away from all of that.
Mm-hmm.
39 years ago. And I found ways to make money creatively, and that was fun, legally. So we'll talk about that soon too. But there's a lot of stuff to cover. Yes, I'm getting attention with these old stories. I don't want to glamorize and make it feel like the glorious days of the mob, but I lived it, and I learned that it wasn't the right life. And eventually, yeah, we'll talk about self-improvement. We will.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's a good part of it. That's a big part of your life after, because I mean, you were in this life for 20 plus years, and that wasn't your whole life. I mean, you had a whole other life outside of it.
Right, right.
Do you want to continue going? I mean, we got comments.
Well, if you got more questions, we'll give them. It's a holiday. We'll give them answers.
I know. I'm happy. I love doing these lives, man.
Yeah.
Let's see. This one, I don't think you knew Billy Bats, did you? Their name is Time, I believe.
Nope, I never met him. Didn't know him.
Okay.
I did go to Henry's Club on Queens Boulevard called The Suite. I went there a few times, and they were all hanging out there. Jimmy and his crew, and Henry and Tommy. Yes, I did go there, but I didn't know Billy Bats at all. No, did not.
Okay. What about Polivario's sons?
Oh, Peter. I mean, I met a few of his sons, but I didn't interact with Paulie because that was Cataldo's job. I couldn't just go meet with Paulie as a made member of another family. I had to go with Cataldo. That's how that worked.
Yeah.
Back then. So you couldn't just go meet some made guy.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that, friend. How do you say that name? Francesca? Francisco. Well, thank you for asking. That's another good one. Let's see. Was John Gotti scared of Jimmy Burke from Alex?
I can't answer that question, but Gotti was very careful about how he treated people. And Jimmy Burke had a great personality. He had a great background. Everybody knew that he was a tough guy. I don't think that had come into play. Really, John Gotti came into one of the drops where we had stolen merchandise, and they all got along because John Gotti with Faticos and Jimmy Burke was with Varios, and so everybody sort of had, a mob guy that they were assigned to, and it was very respectful back in those days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. This guy, JW, he said, you have a brain and a heart to have survived the 70s amongst all those killers. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be here and tell your stories. I mean, we've been getting a lot of comments from people saying, Sal's a pretty damn lucky guy to be around, and all these people he knew are gone.
Well, you had to have an antenna. You had to stay out of trouble. I always had the protection of Cataldo because he liked me and I made a lot of money, and we were involved with the secret drug business. So nobody had a hand over me, whether it was Messino or Gotti from different crews. I was always assigned to Cataldo. I met with the boss who became the boss after Colombo had got shot, Brancato, and I was kicking up a little bit of money, Brancato. We couldn't give too much money, Cataldo said, because we always had to fabricate, I made a little score with a robbery or burglary, when in fact, we were mixing drugs. So we couldn't tell, Peg Leg Brancato, we were drug dealers. That would have been embarrassing.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, he wouldn't like that, man. Yeah. This one, I don't know what this is supposed to mean. From Florida attorney, hey Sal, did Leo Rometti have a stinky fish tank? Who's that supposed to be?
I don't know. Who was Lee Riami? I don't know who that was. A stinky fish. Oh, I don't know who that girl was, really.
Oh, wow. Let's see. Colby said, Sal, what type of legitimate businesses was Jimmy Burke involved with, if any?
Legitimate. Well, that's a hard question because much like Jimmy's personality and my personality, I think Henry said Jimmy would root for the bad guys in a movie. That's who he was. And, as far as I remember, I didn't think you could ever get excited over anything that was legitimate. I always thought it had to be crime or a scheme or something. And then when I went undercover for the feds wearing a wire, when I was doing the judge, it was exciting to do this secret stuff. And I had said to the FBI agent, wow, I didn't really understand. You could get excited doing something legal. And then I realized when the FBI agents brought me to, you know, certain FBI areas where they had workshops and seminars, I would get to speak. I actually spoke at a graduation class at Quantico, the FBI training center. And it was exciting. You know, you get in front of a group and you sort of have these people in the palm of your hand, much like a comedian, you know, and they enjoyed my stories. And I guess, you know, some of those people say, hey, Sal's funny. And I said, I didn't know I was funny. Am I amusing you guys? You know,
like Joe Pesci.
Yeah, they got a kick out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if anyone else has any comments or if they want to come on, you know, for a couple minutes, I'll put the link in there, but we'll do one more round of these questions. But in the meantime, while we wait for some questions to come in or anyone, I'll talk about our Patreon channel. If you want to subscribe to our Patreon channel, then, you know, it's in the video description below of this video. What we offer on our Patreon channel is we talk about untold stories of Sal's life, like we do on our podcast on YouTube. But you go over there, there's stuff that's not on YouTube, so you can also chat back and forth with Sal on there. And, you know, we also got, you know, it's just like being a part of a private community. I mean, you really get to really talk about all these mob guys and just mob history and stuff. I mean, anything you guys want to throw at us, you know, or have us talk about different topics or ideas that they have. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. Ad-free videos, and, you know, during our lives, we make sure we touch on all of our Patreon subscribers, you know, to get to their comments first, because, you know, they're top priority for now. You know, they're you know, paying us and stuff, so we appreciate them. You know, they're really supporting us to the core. So, yeah. I mean, I'll include in the video description on this video as well the John Gotti, you know, he played with Sal's cards, in the Sinatra Club cards, Jimmy Burke, Tommy DeSimone, Poliverio, just a lot of the guys that, you know, Sal always talks about. I mean, they all use these cards and stuff. So we got them for sale on our website. They're $10 a piece. And we also got Sal's book, The Sinatra Club, on there. You can get an autographed copy of that. And yeah, it's in the video description. So, I mean, that's kind of what I got to promote. Yesterday, I dropped the video of Sal talking about Angelo Ruggiero and Sal's relationship with him. He was, I believe, the fourth hitman we covered. And then this morning, we did a video about Jimmy Burke, but it's not out yet. It'll be out next Saturday. And yeah, I mean, that's what we got to look forward to. So let's go on and answer some of these questions that came in. So TBP, they said, did you ever meet Tommy Agro? Yeah, you did.
Yeah, Foxy and I would go to his little restaurant bar called Sebastian's. It was in Forest Hills, and Foxy and I would hang out there. I'm not sure whether he was made when we went there, because we went there 72, 73, maybe early 74, and then eventually, I guess, he became a made guy. As far as I knew, he was the guy who abused Joe Dogs and beat him up and all this kind of stuff. And I guess the rumor was that he killed one of the DeSimone brothers. And whether or not he killed Tommy, I don't know. No. So he was the character. He was a strange guy, a little bit of a guy who wore a wig. That's what I remember about him, you know. And we would go to his restaurant bar. He did make a good steak, and Foxy would hang out there, only because it was close to JFK, and there was lots of flight attendants who they called stewardesses back in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And they were pretty girls, and that's where we met them.
Let's see. And the next one we got is Anon. He said, Sal, how many associates did Cataldo have around him, and what other illegal activities was he involved in?
Oh, little Dom, he found ways to make money. You name it, he found ways to make money. Of course, the basis for all his money was the secret drug business, which him and I and a guy named Jackie Donnelly were involved in. Dominic was also very clever and secretive about his relationship with others. And there was a lot of people I didn't know that Cataldo was associated with. but he was well known in New York, and they all knew he was a hitman. And towards the end, I wasn't even around him when he got busted by the feds. He wound up getting, I don't know, I think he was on the commission case and got like 30 years and died.
Yeah, he had cancer and died in prison.
Yeah, but he killed a lot of people. There's no doubt. There were stories about how he killed somebody, and they went to dig the guy a grave, and he asked one of the guys that was with him, "Hey, we forgot to get his jewelry. Go down there and get his jewelry." When the guy went down in the grave, Cataldo shot him too. So he was a dangerous guy, and at the end, I didn't even know who he became. He became an egotistical narcissist who thought he had the right to kill people.
Yeah, I'm sure. Let's see. Bradley, he came in and he said, "Good evening, guys, from London, home of the great food." LOL. He said, "Did you know Dominic? How do you say it? Montelo?"
Yeah. I didn't know him. I really didn't know Dominic at all.
Yeah, he was doing a lot of documentaries, didn't he?
Yeah.
He came out. He was one of the guys that flipped as well.
Yeah, I did not know him.
Okay. Ninja said, "Did Jimmy Burke and John Gotti get along?"
Well, as far as I knew, it was very casual. They were both involved with the hijack loads that we did, and they got along. I mean, through the Fatico brothers and Paulie Vario, who totally respected each other. And they came from the same Brooklyn neighborhoods, Vario and the Faticos, which was East New York. I guess Jimmy and John did get along.
Yeah. Another one we got was, who was John Gotti's tailor?
Well,
John.
that's a funny question. I don't remember the tailor I had, but he had made suits for me and for Foxy. He even made my wife slacks. And then Gotti got a hold of the idea, hey, let me go see this tailor. So he went there and he got some suits made. That was in the early 70s. And eventually Gotti, he switched to Armani clothes and high dollar Baroni suits. Once he became popular, like after the McBratney prison term that he did, because he did about, I want to say he got out the summer of 77. So he did about 2 years on that. And when he came out, he became a captain. And he was well known throughout the whole city. That really set up his reputation for the McBratney killing.
Mm-hmm. The next one we got in is from Desi, I think it is. Sal, I heard you mention Roy DeMeo earlier in the show. Did you know him? And if so, will you be doing a show on him? Yep. We
will do a show on Roy DeMeo, because Roy DeMeo was another guy that had several secret lives and operations. And I sold him stolen car parts from my chop shops, because I had a chop shop in Brooklyn. I had one in Queens, and he was a buyer. He would buy that stuff all day long. Well, where and what he was doing that stuff, I don't know. I heard he was shipping it to Europe, South America. And at the same time, he had this lounge in Brooklyn. I guess it was Canarsie. And he had two guys that were killing with him. And they were vicious murderers. And they would kill people, drain the blood out of them. And eventually, the time came where there was an order to kill him. And from what I heard, Gotti, refused to kill him, thinking he was very dangerous. I think Gene Gotti might have made a recording saying that Roy DeMeo killed dozens and dozens of people. And so they passed the contract on, and someone else killed him. But if you really dig around, which this part I didn't know about DeMeo, he was involved with the Iceman. So maybe you guys should read the book about DeMeo. I think it was called For the Sins of My Father by his son.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, also there was the Iceman book. So guys want some information. I don't know how accurate all that is, but as far as I knew, I only knew him as buying stolen car parts. And again, like I said, everybody had a slice of life that was secretive. And he had a secret life of killing people.
Yeah. Another follow-up on Roy was from TBP. They said, what was Roy's personality like? Sammy said it was unassuming. How you say it? Yeah.
Unassuming. Yeah, he didn't make a big deal about himself. He was quiet. He was reserved. And I wouldn't have thought that he was a serial killer, to be honest with you. I thought he was just interested in buying stolen car parts, which a lot of people were. But he had another vicious, treacherous side to him. Yeah. And once you read about the killings that they did, oh my God, he killed people by accident. and it was very sad, and God, it was a mess. I guess eventually Castellano put the word out. He needed to go, and how
Mhm.
they killed him, I don't know exactly, but I think they found him in the trunk of his own car.
Yeah, I think so too. The next one we got was from Damos Welding Shorts. He said, "Hey guys, great show. What's your opinion on mob channels all at war with each other on YouTube? Me and Sal stay out of it, right? I mean, we don't we don't get involved with the shit, man.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. I don't follow that stuff.
No,
I got enough going on at my age with a wife and a house and
yeah,
grandchildren. I just do this with Adrian because he likes it, he loves it, and he's becoming an authority because he does a lot of research.
yeah,
So
definitely.
my stories with his capabilities of research and online sort of makes good for a podcast.
Oh yeah, man. Each episode we do about a different guy. I'm always reading the book about him. Let's see. We got a super chat coming in. Can't stop, won't stop. 4.99. Hey, thank you. We appreciate the super chat. He said, Sal, who was the toughest guy you met in the life? Who was the most dangerous?
Dangerous. Cataldo wasn't a big guy, but he was really dangerous. He killed a lot of people. But some of the other guys that I met, you didn't realize how dangerous they were because they didn't share that information. You'd get storylines, about a tough guy, guys that were fighters. There was a lot of brawlers that I met. Foxy was a hell of a brawler. He could break your jaw with one punch.
Damn.
So that was my opinion. I don't think Foxy was treacherous though. I think he signed up to be the best friend that Gotti could have as sort of a younger brother. So tough guys, yeah, I met a lot of tough guys along the way, but I don't know. It's hard to say about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you met Roy DeMeo. I mean, you didn't see that violent side of him, but
No.
I mean, I'd say out of all the guys that you were probably around, he's probably the one.
He was dangerous. He killed people who he wasn't supposed to kill. And of course, Charles Caniglia, which we're going to do a whole hour on, this was a dangerous, treacherous, sick, satanic killer.
He was another one that you were close with or did business with
yeah.
and stuff, and his brother as well, John. So
Yeah.
those are some guys right there. Can't stop, won't stop. That's a very good question, and we'll be sure to do a whole episode on Roy DeMeo and Charles Caniglia. Those are going to be two guys we talk about. So good question. Let's see. You want to keep going or?
Well, we got a lot of questions today. Yeah, if you got questions, we'll answer them.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Juan asked, what was John Gotti's favorite food?
Well, we all used to go to this Italian restaurant in Queens, and it was called Villa Russo. And they eventually opened up another location. Hold on one second. They opened another location in Howard Beach. There was two brothers, Joe Russo, and they had this great catering hall. And I know Gotti liked their food. What exactly he liked, I don't really remember, but anything that they made, Villa Russo, it was on 101st Avenue. It was a great restaurant. I think there's still one of the locations open, but he was pretty diversified about the food he ate. I know he went to a lot of high dollar restaurants in New York. So
yeah, let's see. I'm trying to get to some people that we haven't answered yet. Let's see. Brett, he said, "Did you know Henry Hill? Yeah, was the Goodfellas actually a true showing that Henry was an associate of that life? Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I knew Henry before I went to jail. I was in jail in Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary with Henry while he worked in the kitchen stealing the meat for Paulie, so Paulie could slice that garlic. I was in that room, and yeah, it was pretty accurate. I mean, Scorsese did a good job. He did a good job with the movie.
Yeah, let's see. David said, "Aloha from Oakland, California." Hey, what up, David? Felix, he said, did Sal know Karen Hill? We rarely hear anything about her role in the crew or the role of any of the other wives. Word is she had an affair with Paulie at one time or another, which, me and you talked about. Who knows about that?
I didn't know Karen up close in front. She was in the visiting room visiting Henry in Lewisburg. My wife was there. So they got to say hello. But I don't know anything personal about
Karen.
Karen and Paulie. No, I didn't know anything about that.
Okay. I know this could be a giant rabbit hole, but we'll talk about it briefly. He said, what do you think happened to Jimmy Hoffa? Iron said that.
God only knows. There's so many stories. There was a guy named Francos who said he killed him. There was a bunch of guys who said they killed him. You could look at the Irishman. Who knows?
Yeah,
What
no.
I do know is that, Jimmy Hoffa was given a pardon in early 72, and Nixon was running, for president again.
Mhm.
And, well, if you think about it, after the election, and Jimmy Hoffa was banned from being the head of the unions. One day, they all of a sudden Hoffa disappeared. So nobody really knows.
Yeah. Well,
Again, another bunch of speculation.
I know. We got another super chat in from Can't Stop, Won't Stop. He said, Sal, can you share anything about a Greg Scarpa story?
Well, one of the things that was interesting to me was, I want to say it was, let's see, it had to be between 12. No, I'm saying no, it had to be maybe 13 or 14, 2013, 14. I get a call from my literary agent who represented me with Simon & Schuster on my book. And she said, look, there's an editor from a publisher who wants to talk to you. Would you call her? So I called this woman and she said, look, we're doing a book called The Mafia Hitman's Daughter. It was about Linda Scarpa, Greg Scarpa's daughter.
Right.
And would you talk to her and give us some info on what she's going to go through, getting the book out and all? So I started talking with Linda Scarpa, and I learned all about her. Oh my God, I learned so much about her and her life. It was kind of amazing. I mean, she should be on some of these podcasts saying how you got to stay away from, Italian mob guys, because they will turn your life upside down. And I learned all about her, and she had twin kids, and she was just going through a hard time. And the issue that I learned about Linda Scarpa was she was so impressed with her dad, the life he lived. She could never be with anybody but Italian mob guys. And it was sad to me. And that was maybe for a couple of years until the book came out. I actually still have a copy of the manuscript. And I critiqued her book, and I thought it was well done. From what I heard, she sold the rights to a couple of big producers, and maybe they're going to do that movie. Because she lived a tragic life. My God, if you read about the stuff that happened to her, and she was a smart gal, but she was so impressed upon the mafia life. I thought it was sad that, when I finally, stopped talking to her, I didn't see any purpose. And, she was younger than I was, but she lived a terrible, terrible, tragic life.
Mm-hmm. Again, and the family is also affected by, again, the father's actions in that life. I mean, it's always treacherous, man, and you really put your family through that. And in her case, he was definitely a brutal guy. He was working for the feds, and he was doing all this treacherous stuff. They were letting him kill and doing all kinds of stuff, man.
Yep, terrible story.
Thank you for that question. That was a good question. Can't stop, won't stop. Let's see. Let's see. Sigma Magic or music. Did you guys know anything about Joey Fama? The guy convicted of killing Yusfa Hawking, and what role did he play in the mafia? Did you know that one, Sal, or no?
I'm not familiar with that storyline.
Yeah. Let's see. this one, TBP, he said, what was John Gotti's personality like? How was he so captivating? I suppose you already kind of went into that, but I mean, you just said he was just really, you know,
John was
cocky.
clever. He was a terrific actor. He probably would have been great in Hollywood. He wasn't the loudest guy in the room. He was the most convincing person in the room. And he was manipulative when it came to conversations.
Mhm.
I mean, he can impress people. And he was bright. A lot of people don't know he was an artist. You know, he was well read. And I played games with him, different games like we played Scrabble together. You know, we played chess. John was a pretty bright guy who didn't have any formal education, but you know, if you look at some of the stuff that shows up on bidding sites like eBay, he had an interesting way to write, sort of like Victorian style writing. So he was an interesting guy to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Augie O says, in your book, you say Sonny Francis was a bank robber and he did go away for that, but his son Michael swears that he did not do it. What are your thoughts on this?
I didn't say Sonny Francis was a bank robber. I said he was convicted of bank robbery with my uncle. And I truly believe the government framed Sonny Francis.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think he was involved with a couple of guys that were tough guys that would make him believe that they were going to be mob guys, and yet they were drug users who hung out in my uncle's motel in 1965. And so somehow Sonny got sucked into, a relationship with them. But I don't know all the details, but I think the government framed him.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to really. I mean, again, and like the guys like this, they pose for that picture. They make it easy for the government to, frame them or put it on there. I mean, he was the underboss of the Colombo family, so you're doing all these things. He had a major record and everything like that. So, they're like, well, we'll just throw this on him, and if we can't get him for anything else, then we'll just get him for this. So
Right.
that's what happens. But I think that's probably a good stopping point. What do you think, Sal?
Oh, yeah, we did a lot of questions.
I know, man. We went from having 30 people come in on our lives. Now we got 50, or we had 50, but hell, we got 190 people in here, like currently live and just joining in, asking
Well, that's
questions.
great.
So
That's good.
So we're doing one. This is like I think our third or fourth one, and so now we're doing pretty damn good and it's growing pretty quick. So we appreciate
a lot of good information though.
Yeah, I know it is, and so we appreciate these questions because they're interesting. They give us ideas for new topics, and of course, we like to get to everyone, but sometimes that don't happen because there's so many questions coming in. But if you always want to boost your way up, you can always do the super chats and stuff. But we'll try to get to do Sunday lives and ask people. You can ask questions and everything like that. But if you want to. Here in about 20, 25 minutes, I'll be posting another podcast of myself. I interviewed Michael Vacconi, and he was a prosecutor for 30 years, and he prosecuted a lot of mafia guys and wrote a number of books. And, in this book, he talks about taking down a Bonanno hitman, becoming an informant, and just really telling him his whole life story in the mafia and being a hitman and stuff. So you can see that here in a little bit. I'll be posting it after me and Sal get off here. But again, thanks everyone for supporting. It really means a lot to us. And we'll see you guys on the next live. And look out, Saturday, we'll have Jimmy Burke's episode coming out.
Oh, cool.
All right, Sal. Well, I'll just end it there.
All right. You had